Asterisk, have you ever wondered what would happen if bees disappeared tomorrow? Stay until the end of this presentation because what I'm about to reveal will completely change the way you see your breakfast, your garden, and the very survival of humanity. In the next hour, we're going to explore the hidden world of pollination, discover what would happen in just 30 days without bees, and understand why these tiny creatures are literally holding our entire food system together. So let me continue where we left off. We were talking about sustainable beekeeping practices, but now I want to shift gears and take you on a journey that begins right at your breakfast table this morning. Think about what you ate. Maybe you had coffee with a splash of milk, perhaps some toast with jam, maybe an apple or a bowl of yogurt with berries and almonds. Now, let me tell you something that might shock you. Without bees, most of what was on your plate this morning wouldn't exist. I know that sounds dramatic. I know it sounds like an exaggeration, but I'm going to prove it to you, step by step with real science, real data, and real stories from the field. And I promise you, by the time we finish this hour together, you'll never look at a bee the same way again. Let's start with something simple. An apple, beautiful, crisp, sweet. You bite into it and you taste autumn. You taste orchards, you taste nature. But the apple exists because a bee visited a flower. Not just one bee, actually. It takes multiple visits from multiple bees to properly pollinate an apple blossom and create a fruit that's worth eating. Without those visits, the flower withers and dies. No fruit, no apple, nothing. Now multiply that by every fruit and vegetable that depends on pollination. Almonds. Every single almond you've ever eaten exists because a bee pollinated an almond blossom. 100% of almond production depends on bee pollination. Blueberries, cherries, cucumbers, melons, pumpkins, strawberries, tomatoes, the list goes on and on. Roughly 1/3 of all the food we eat depends directly on pollinators, and bees are responsible for the vast majority of that pollination. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is something most people don't understand. Pollination isn't just about fruits and vegetables that we eat directly. It's about the entire food chain. Think about beef. Think about chicken. Think about dairy products. The animals that produce these foods need to eat too. And what do they eat? Alfalfa, clover, other forage crops. And guess what pollinates those crops? Bees. So when we talk about bees sustaining your breakfast, we're not just talking about the obvious things like the berries in your yogurt or the apple on your plate. We're talking about the milk in your coffee, the butter on your toast, the cheese in your omelet. All of it traces back to pollination. All of it traces back to bees. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. Close your eyes for a moment. Or if you're watching this, just try to visualize what I'm about to describe. Imagine it's a perfect spring morning. The sun is rising over an almond orchard in California. Thousands of trees stretching as far as you can see. Every single tree covered in white and pink blossoms. The air is filled with the most incredible fragrance, sweet and delicate, and everywhere you hear the sound of bees. Millions of them, working, visiting flower after flower, collecting pollen, spreading it from blossom to blossom, creating life. This scene happens every single year. And every single year, beekeepers from across the entire country truck their hives to California for almond pollination season. It's the largest managed pollination event in the world. Over 2 million bee colonies, representing more than 30 billion bees, all working together to pollinate almond trees. Asterisk, but what I'm about to tell you next will absolutely blow your mind. Keep watching. The relationship between bees and flowers is not just convenient. It's not just useful. It's one of the most sophisticated partnerships that evolution has ever created. And it goes back millions of years. Long before humans walked the earth, bees and flowering plants were already working together, evolving together, shaping each other's development in ways that scientists are still trying to fully understand. Flowers have evolved to attract bees. They've developed colors that bees can see, patterns that guide them to nectar, fragrances that signal when they're ready for pollination. Some flowers have even evolved shapes that perfectly match the body of specific bee species. It's like a lock and key. Only that particular bee can access the nectar, and in doing so, it picks up pollen that it will carry to the next flower of the same species. And bees, in turn, have evolved to work with flowers. They've developed specialized body parts for collecting pollen. They've learned to see ultraviolet patterns on petals that are completely invisible to human eyes. They've created complex communication systems to tell other bees where the best flowers are located. They've built entire societies around the collection and storage of nectar and pollen. This is cooperation at its finest. This is nature working in perfect harmony. And we as humans are the beneficiaries of this ancient partnership. Every time we eat a meal, every time we enjoy fresh fruit, every time we spread honey on our toast, we're participating in a system that has been perfected over millions of years. But here's the problem. And this is where our story takes a darker turn. This ancient partnership is breaking down. Bee populations around the world are declining at alarming rates. In some regions, we've lost 40% of bee colonies in just the last decade. 40% gone. And the remaining colonies are weaker, more vulnerable to disease, less productive than they used to be. Why is this happening? Well, there's no single answer. It's a combination of factors. Pesticides are killing bees directly or weakening their immune systems. Habitat loss means there are fewer flowers for bees to forage on. Climate change is disrupting the timing of flower blooms and bee activity. Parasites and diseases are spreading faster than ever before, and industrial agriculture practices have created environments where bees struggle to survive. I've seen this firsthand. I've visited farms where every bee colony looked healthy and strong, and then 6 months later, half of them were dead. I've talked to beekeepers who have been working with bees for 30, 40 years, and they tell me they've never seen anything like what's happening now. The bees are struggling, and when bees struggle, we all struggle. So let's do a thought experiment together. Let's imagine what would actually happen if bees disappeared. Not gradually over decades, but suddenly. Tomorrow morning, you wake up and every bee on Earth is gone. What happens next? Asterisk and trust me, what I'm about to describe is more terrifying than any horror movie. Stay with me. Day 1. Most people wouldn't even notice. Life would continue as normal. Your refrigerator is still full of food. The grocery stores are still stocked. Everything seems fine. Day 7. The first signs start to appear. Farmers who depend on bee pollination for their crops start to panic. Apple orchards, strawberry fields, almond groves, all sitting there with flowers that will never be pollinated. Agricultural experts start sounding alarms. The news begins to cover the story. But still, most people aren't worried. There's still food in the stores. Day 15, prices start to rise. Almonds become 3 times more expensive overnight. Fresh berries are suddenly a luxury item. Apple juice disappears from shelves because there's no new crop coming. But it's not just the obvious things. Beef prices start climbing because cattle feed is becoming scarce. Day 20, the reality starts to hit home. Grocery stores have empty sections. Fruits and vegetables that were once abundant are now rare and expensive. Restaurants are changing their menus, eliminating dishes they can no longer prepare. Food manufacturers are scrambling to reformulate products because key ingredients are unavailable. The economy is starting to feel the pressure. Day 30. This is where things get truly serious. We're not just talking about inconvenience anymore. We're talking about genuine food shortages. 1/3 of our food supply is directly impacted. Malnutrition rates begin to climb, especially in vulnerable populations. Children, elderly people, those living in poverty. The social fabric starts to strain under the pressure. But let me be clear about something. This isn't just a theoretical scenario. This is a very real possibility if we don't act now to protect bee populations. And the scary part is, we're already seeing the warning signs. We're already experiencing the early stages of what could become a catastrophic collapse. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Can't we just pollinate crops by hand? Can't we develop technology to replace bees? Well, let's talk about that for a moment. Hand pollination is possible in some parts of China, where bee populations have been decimated by pesticide use. Farmers are already doing this. They climb ladders with brushes and manually transfer pollen from flower to flower. It works, but it's incredibly labor-intensive and expensive. One person can hand pollinate what thousands of bees can do in a day. The cost of food produced this way would be astronomical. Most people simply couldn't afford it. What about robot bees, drone pollinators? Scientists are working on this. There are prototypes, but we're decades away from having anything that could operate at the scale needed to replace natural pollinators. And even if we could create such technology, the cost would be prohibitive. Nature provides pollination services worth hundreds of billions of dollars every year, absolutely free. Trying to replace that with technology would bankrupt our agricultural system. The truth is, there is no replacement for bees. There is no backup plan. We need them. They are irreplaceable. And that's exactly why we need to do everything in our power to protect them. So what can we do? How do we reverse this decline? How do we save the bees and, by extension, save ourselves? This is where modern, ecological beekeeping comes in. This is where the conversation shifts from doom and gloom to hope and action. Because there are solutions. There are practices we can implement right now that will make a real difference. First, we need to understand that conventional industrial agriculture and healthy bee populations cannot coexist in their current forms. The heavy use of pesticides, the monoculture farming practices, the elimination of wildflower habitats, all of this is incompatible with bee health. We need to transition to ecological farming methods that work with nature instead of against it. Organic farming is a huge part of the solution. When farms eliminate synthetic pesticides and herbicides, bee populations thrive. I've seen this transformation happen. I've worked with farmers who made the switch from conventional to organic. And within 2 years, their land went from being nearly devoid of pollinators to being absolutely buzzing with life. And what happens next in this transformation is absolutely remarkable. Regenerative agriculture takes this even further. It's not just about eliminating harmful chemicals. It's about actively rebuilding ecosystems, planting hedgerows filled with native flowers, creating pollinator corridors that connect different habitats, maintaining diverse crops that bloom at different times, providing food for bees throughout the growing season, using cover crops that bees can forage on. I've visited regenerative farms that look completely different from conventional operations. Instead of endless rows of a single crop stretching to the horizon, you see diversity, you see life. You see flowers blooming between crop rows. You see hedges and trees providing shelter and food. You hear the constant hum of bees and other pollinators doing their work. And here's the amazing part: these farms are often more productive and more profitable than their conventional counterparts. Why? Because when you work with nature, nature works with you. Healthy soil produces healthier plants. Diverse ecosystems are more resilient to pests and diseases. Pollinators ensure better crop yields. It's a positive feedback loop. Everything reinforces everything else. But this transformation doesn't just happen on farms. It needs to happen in our cities, in our suburbs, in our own backyards. Every single person can contribute to saving the bees. And it starts with simple changes in how we manage the land around us. Stop using pesticides in your garden. I know it's tempting to spray something when you see aphids on your roses or ants on your patio. But those chemicals don't just kill the pests. They kill bees, they kill butterflies. They poison the entire ecosystem. There are natural alternatives for almost every pest problem. Companion planting beneficial insects. Organic sprays made from soap and water. These methods work and they don't harm pollinators. Plant flowers. This seems obvious, but it's incredibly powerful. These need food from early spring until late fall. If everyone planted even a small patch of pollinator-friendly flowers, we would create millions of acres of bee habitat. Native wildflowers are best because they've evolved alongside native bee species. But even non-native flowers can provide valuable nectar and pollen sources. Let parts of your lawn grow wild. I know this goes against everything we've been taught about lawn care. A perfect lawn is supposed to be a uniform green carpet, perfectly mowed without a single dandelion or clover. But that perfect lawn is an ecological desert. Nothing lives there. Nothing feeds there. It's just grass. Now imagine if you let a section of your lawn grow naturally. Dandelions, clover, violets, all the flowers that we've been taught to think of as weeds. These are actually valuable food sources for bees, especially in early spring when few other flowers are blooming. Create bee habitat. This can be as simple as leaving some bare ground for ground nesting bees, or drilling holes in blocks of wood for cavity nesting species. Most people think all bees live in hives, but actually the vast majority of bee species are solitary. They don't make honey, they don't live in colonies. They nest alone in the ground or in hollow stems or in holes in wood. These native bees are incredibly important pollinators and they need our help too. Support local beekeepers, buy local honey. Not just because it tastes better, though it does, but because when you support local beekeepers, you're supporting people who are actively maintaining bee populations in your area. You're helping to keep the tradition of beekeeping alive. You're contributing to local food security. But here's something critical that often gets overlooked. Beekeeping itself needs to evolve. Traditional practices, while time-tested, were developed in a different era. We face different challenges now. We need modern, ecological approaches that prioritize bee health above all else. Can the innovations happening right now in sustainable beekeeping will absolutely amaze you. Modern ecological beekeeping starts with a fundamental shift in perspective. The goal is not to maximize honey production at any cost. The goal is to maintain healthy, thriving bee colonies that can survive without constant human intervention. Honey becomes a bonus, a gift that the bees provide when they have surplus, not something we extract at every opportunity. This means working with natural bee behavior instead of against it. It means allowing bees to build their comb naturally rather than forcing them into artificial foundation. It means letting queens mate naturally rather than artificially inseminating them. It means allowing colonies to swarm, which is their natural method of reproduction, rather than suppressing this instinct to maximize production. Treatment-free beekeeping is gaining momentum. For decades, beekeepers have relied on chemical treatments to control varroa mites, the parasites that have devastated bee populations worldwide. But these treatments have side effects. They weaken bees, they contaminate honey and wax, and worst of all, the mites are developing resistance to these chemicals, making them less effective every year. Treatment-free beekeepers take a different approach. They breed bees that have natural resistance to mites. They create conditions that make colonies stronger and more resilient. They accept that some colonies will fail, but the ones that survive pass on their genetics to the next generation, creating stronger bees over time. It's evolution in action. It's nature doing what nature does best, adapting and surviving. Technology is playing a role too, but in ways that support natural processes rather than replace them. Smart hive monitors can track temperature, humidity, and weight without disturbing the bees. This data helps beekeepers understand what's happening inside the hive without having to open it constantly. Thermal imaging can detect problems early. Acoustic monitoring can identify when a colony is preparing to swarm or when the queen has died. But the most important innovation isn't technological. It's philosophical. It's the growing understanding that bees are not livestock to be exploited. They're wild creatures that we're privileged to work with. They're partners in a relationship that should be mutually beneficial. When we approach beekeeping with this mindset, everything changes. I've seen this shift happen in the beekeeping community over the past decade. More and more people are questioning conventional practices. They're experimenting with natural methods. They're sharing their successes and failures. They're creating a new paradigm for how humans and bees can coexist. And this connects directly to sustainable livestock farming, because the same principles apply. Animals are not production units. They're living beings with their own needs and instincts. Modern ecological farming recognizes this. Chickens are allowed to forage naturally. Cattle are raised on pasture, not in feedlots. Pigs are given space to root and wallow. And crucially, these farms incorporate diverse plant life that supports pollinators. I visited a farm last year that perfectly exemplifies this integration. They raise cattle on rotational pasture, moving them frequently to prevent overgrazing. Behind the cattle, they keep chickens in mobile coops that fertilize the land and control pests. Throughout the pastures, they've planted native wildflowers and clovers that feed both the livestock and the pollinators. And they keep beehives at the edges of the property. Everything works together. The cattle graze the grass. The chickens follow, eating insects and spreading manure. The flowers bloom, feeding the bees. The bees pollinate the flowers, ensuring abundant forage for next year. It's a beautiful cycle. It's regenerative. It builds soil health, increases biodiversity, and produces nutrient-dense food. And the results they're getting are nothing short of extraordinary. You need to hear this. The cattle from this farm are healthier than conventionally raised animals. They require fewer veterinary interventions. They gain weight steadily on nothing but grass and forage. The meat is more nutritious, with higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids and vitamins. Customers can taste the difference. They can see the difference in the deep color of the meat. And they're willing to pay premium prices because they understand the value of food produced this way. The chickens produce eggs with bright orange yolks, a sign of their diverse diet and healthy lifestyle. The shells are thick and strong. The chickens themselves are active and alert, exhibiting natural behaviors that factory-farmed birds never experience. Disease is rare because the animals aren't crowded together in stressful conditions. And the honey from those hives? It's unlike anything you can buy in a supermarket. Each batch tastes different depending on what flowers were blooming. Spring honey is light and floral. Summer honey is rich and complex. Fall honey is dark and robust. It's raw and filtered, full of pollen and enzymes. This is what honey is supposed to be. But here's what really matters. This farm is profitable, not just surviving, but thriving. The farmers make a good living. They're not working themselves to death. They're not drowning in debt. They're not dependent on subsidies. They're proving that ecological farming isn't just idealistic dreaming. It's practical. It's economically viable. It's the future of agriculture. And this model can scale. You don't need thousands of acres to farm this way. Small farms can implement these principles. Urban farms can adapt them. Even large operations can gradually, one field at a time, one practice at a time. The key is diversity. Monoculture is the enemy of ecological farming. When you have only one crop, you create an unstable system that requires constant inputs of pesticides and fertilizers. But when you have diversity, plants and animals and insects all working together, the system becomes self-regulating. Problems solve themselves. Nature finds balance. Think about a natural meadow. Nobody fertilizes it. Nobody sprays it. Nobody manages it. And yet it thrives year after year. Different plants bloom in succession, providing continuous food for pollinators. Predator insects keep pest populations in check. Deep-rooted plants bring up nutrients from the subsoil. Nitrogen-fixing plants enrich the soil. Everything has a role. Everything contributes. That's the model we should be following in agriculture. Not the industrial model of control and domination, but the ecological model of cooperation and integration. And bees are central to this model. They're the connective tissue that holds everything together. They move between plants, between farms, between ecosystems, spreading life wherever they go. Now, let me tell you about something that happened just last month. I was visiting a farm that had recently converted from conventional corn and soybean production to a diverse ecological operation. The transformation took 3 years. In year 1, they stopped using pesticides and started planting cover crops. In year 2, they introduced livestock and began building pollinator habitat. In year 3, they added beehives and diversified their crops. The farmer told me the first year was scary. Yields dropped. Weeds were everywhere. It felt like everything was falling apart. But he stuck with it because he knew the conventional system was killing his land. The soil was dead. Earthworms were gone. By year 3, the land had come back to life. Earthworms returned. Beneficial insects disappeared. Birds nested in the hedgerows. And the bees were everywhere. He said sometimes he would just stand in a field and listen to them. Thousands of them, working the flowers. Asterisk, and what happened to his profits will shock you. His income doubled, even though his yields per acre were slightly lower than conventional farming. His costs had dropped dramatically. No more expensive pesticides. No more synthetic fertilizers. No more paying for expensive hybrid seeds every year. And he was selling his products directly to consumers at premium prices. Grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken, organic vegetables, raw honey. People lined up to buy from him. But more than the money, he said something that really struck me. He said he loved farming again. For 20 years, he had hated what he was doing. He was spraying poisons on his land. He was watching the soil degrade. He was trapped in a system that felt wrong. But now, he wakes up excited to work. He's rebuilding something. He's creating life instead of destroying it. He's leaving his children land that will be better than what he inherited. That's the power of ecological farming. It's not just about production. It's not just about profit. It's about purpose. It's about being part of something larger than yourself. It's about working with nature instead of against it. And this brings us back to bees. Because bees represent everything that's right about this approach. They can't be controlled. They can't be fully domesticated. They follow their own instincts, their own patterns. The best we can do is provide them with good habitat, protect them from harm, and step back to let them do what they do best. When we try to control bees too much, they suffer. When we treat them like machines, extracting maximum honey with minimum regard for their well-being, colonies collapse. But when we work with their nature, when we respect their needs, they thrive. And when they thrive, everything around them thrives too. This is the lesson that agriculture needs to learn. Control is an illusion. The industrial farming model is based on the idea that we control nature. bend it to our will, force it to produce what we want regardless of ecological consequences. And for a while, it seemed to work. Production increased, yields went up, food became cheaper. But we're now seeing the true cost of that approach. Degraded soil, polluted water, collapsing bee populations, climate change accelerated by destructive farming practices, loss of biodiversity, and ironically, less nutritious food despite higher yields. The system is breaking down. Ecological farming offers a different path. It's based on cooperation rather than control. It recognizes that we're part of nature, not separate from it. It understands that healthy ecosystems produce abundance naturally, without force, without chemicals, without destroying the foundation of future productivity. And it works all around the world. Farmers are proving it works. In every climate, in every region, with every type of crop and livestock. Ecological methods are producing results. Not just environmental results, but economic results, profitable farms, healthy communities, resilient food systems. The transition isn't always easy. It requires knowledge, it requires patience. It requires a willingness to learn from nature and from other farmers who have walked this path before. But it's possible, and it's necessary. Because here's the truth that we need to face. The current agricultural system is unsustainable. It cannot continue. We're depleting our soil faster than it can regenerate. We're draining aquifers faster than they can recharge. We're losing pollinators faster than they can recover. We're in a trajectory that leads to catastrophe. But we can change course. We can choose a different path. Every farmer who transitions to ecological methods is a step in the right direction. Every person who supports sustainable agriculture with their food choices is contributing to change. Every garden planted with pollinator-friendly flowers is part of the solution. Asterisk, and the next thing I'm going to tell you about will give you hope for the future. There's a movement growing. It's not organized by any single entity. It's not controlled by corporations or governments. It's a grassroots awakening happening in communities everywhere. People are reconnecting with their food. They're questioning where it comes from and how it's produced. They're choosing quality over convenience. They're supporting local farmers who are doing things right. Farmers' markets are flourishing. Community-supported agriculture programs are expanding. Urban farms are sprouting up in empty lots and on rooftops. Schools are teaching children about pollination and sustainable food systems. Restaurants are sourcing ingredients from ecological farms and telling those stories to their customers. This is how change happens, not from the top down, but from the bottom up, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one farm at a time. And bees are at the center of this movement because they're a perfect symbol of what we're fighting for. They represent the interdependence of all life. They show us that we can't separate our well-being from the well-being of the natural world. Let me share another story with you. There's a woman named Sarah who lives in a suburban neighborhood. 3 years ago, she knew nothing about bees. She was scared of them, actually. She would run inside if a bee came near her. But then she attended a talk about pollinator decline and something clicked. She realized these creatures she had always feared were actually in desperate need of help. She started small. She planted a few native wildflowers in her front yard. Her neighbors thought she was crazy. The homeowners association sent her a letter saying her yard was unkempt. But she persisted. She explained what she was doing. She invited neighbors to see the bees and butterflies visiting her flowers. She shared articles about pollinator decline. Something remarkable happened. One neighbor planted flowers. Then another. Within 2 years, half the street had pollinator gardens. The homeowners association changed their rules to encourage native plantings. Children on the street started learning about insects and ecology. The whole community transformed. And Sarah didn't stop there. She took a beekeeping course. She installed the hives in her backyard. She learned everything she could about colony management and bee health. Now she's teaching others. She's become an advocate for changing local ordinances to allow beekeeping in residential areas. She's created something beautiful out of what started as fear. That's the kind of transformation we need to see multiplied millions of times over. Because the problems we face are big, but the solutions are accessible to everyone. You don't need to be a farmer. You don't need acres of land. You don't need special expertise. You just need to care and to act. Plant flowers, stop using pesticides. Support ecological farmers, buy local honey. Talk to your neighbors about what you're learning. Vote for policies that protect pollinators and promote sustainable agriculture. Choose products from companies committed to environmental stewardship. Every action matters. And if you're thinking this sounds overwhelming, if you're wondering whether individual actions can really make a difference, let me remind you of something. A bee colony contains thousands of individual bees. No single bee is responsible for the survival of the colony. But each bee does its part. Each bee collects nectar, builds comb, tends larvae, guards the entrance. And together, through the cumulative effect of those individual efforts, the colony thrives. We're like that. No single person can solve these problems alone. But each of us can do our part. Aster is Castor. What I'm about to reveal next will change how you see your role in this. You are not just a consumer. You are not just a bystander watching environmental collapse happen. You are a participant in one of the most important transformations in human history. The decisions you make about food, about your yard, about how you spend your money, these aren't trivial choices. They're votes for the kind of world you want to live in. Every time you buy honey from a local beekeeper instead of a plastic bear filled with imported syrup, you're supporting sustainable practices. Every time you choose organic produce, you're telling farmers that you value food grown without pesticides. Every time you let the dandelions bloom in your lawn, you're providing critical early season food for hungry bees emerging from winter. These choices ripple outward in ways you might never see. The beekeeper you support can keep more hives. The organic farmer can convert another field. The bees in your neighborhood can build stronger colonies. And those stronger colonies pollinate more effectively. Which means better gardens for everyone. Which means more people noticing and appreciating pollinators. Which means more gardens, more habitat, more life. This is how ecosystems recover. This is how movements build. This is how we change the world. Now, I want to address something that I hear often when I talk about these issues. People say, isn't it already too late? Haven't we already done too much damage? Can we really reverse acres of environmental destruction? And my answer is always the same. Nature is remarkably resilient. Given half a chance, ecosystems can recover faster than we imagine possible. I've seen it happen. I've seen depleted land come back to life in just a few years. I've seen bee populations rebound when the right conditions are created. I've seen polluted streams run clear again. I've seen forests regrow on abandoned farmland. Life wants to persist. Life wants to thrive. Evolution has equipped organisms with incredible abilities to adapt and survive. What nature needs from us is not heroic intervention. It needs us to stop actively destroying it. It needs us to remove the obstacles we've placed in its way. It needs us to work with it instead of against it. And when we do that, the results can be stunning. There are examples all over the world of ecosystems recovering once destructive practices stopped. Rivers that were declared dead are now teeming with fish. Forests that were clear-cut are regenerating. Species that were on the brink of extinction are coming back. Bees can recover too. Their populations can rebound. But it requires commitment. It requires changing agricultural practices. It requires protecting and restoring habitat. It requires reducing pesticide use. It requires each of us doing our part. The science is clear. We know it needs to be done. The question is whether we have the collective will to do it, whether we care enough to change our habits, whether we're willing to prioritize long-term survival over short-term convenience. I believe we are. I've seen too much evidence of people waking up to these realities. I've seen too many farmers making the transition to ecological methods. I've seen too many communities coming together to protect pollinators. I've seen too much passion and dedication from people who refuse to give up. And I've seen the bees themselves demonstrating incredible resilience. Colonies that should have died surviving against the odds. Feral bee populations thriving without human management in some areas. Native bee species persisting in small pockets of remaining habitat. Life finds a way, but it needs our help. So what does the future look like if we get this right? Imagine with me for a moment. Imagine farms as havens for pollinators. Hedgerows bursting with wildflowers. Pesticides as relics of the past. Soil rich and alive. Food produced in harmony with nature. Asterisk, can this future is closer than you imagine. Driving through the countryside and seeing not endless monocultures, but diverse landscapes. Fields of different crops creating a patchwork of colors. Strips of wildflowers between plantings. Ponds and wetlands integrated into farms. Livestock grazing peacefully on lush pastures dotted with clover and other flowering plants. And everywhere, the sound of bees. Imagine cities where every rooftop has a garden, where vacant lots have been transformed into urban farms and pollinator meadows, where parks are managed for biodiversity rather than sterile lawns, where school children learn about ecology by observing beehives and tending gardens, where people know the names of the flowers and insects around them. Imagine grocery stores where every product tells a story, where you can trace your food back to the farm where it was grown and the farmer who grew it, where quality matters more than price, where seasonal eating is normal again, where local food is the default, not the exception. This isn't fantasy, this is achievable. Parts of it are already happening. The infrastructure is being built right now by pioneers who refuse to accept that the destructive industrial model is the only way forward. But it requires all of us. It requires farmers willing to change their practices. It requires consumers willing to pay fair prices for food produced responsibly. It requires policymakers willing to support sustainable agriculture with appropriate regulations and incentives. It requires educators teaching the next generation to value and understand natural systems. And it requires beekeepers approaching their craft with humility and respect, recognizing that we're working with wild creatures that have their own needs and imperatives. Understanding that our job is not to dominate bees but to facilitate their success. Learning to read what the bees are telling us through their behavior. I've been keeping bees for over 20 years now, and I'm still learning. Every season teaches me something new. Every colony behaves slightly differently. There are patterns, yes, and principles that generally apply. But there's also mystery. There's magic in how these tiny insects coordinate their activities, how they make collective decisions, how they adapt to changing conditions. Sometimes I open a hive and I'm completely surprised by what I find. A colony I expected to be struggling is thriving. A strong colony has unexpectedly swarmed. The bees have built comb in an unusual pattern. They've stored honey in unexpected places. And I have to stop and think about what they're telling me. What do they know that I don't? What are they responding to that I haven't noticed? This is the attitude we need to bring to all of agriculture. This willingness to listen. This recognition that nature is wiser than we are. This humility in the face of complex systems we don't fully understand. Industrial agriculture operates from arrogance. It assumes we can simplify nature, control it, bend it to our will. It treats the land as a factory floor. It treats plants and animals as production units. It ignores inconvenient truths about soil depletion and water pollution and biodiversity loss. Ecological agriculture operates from respect. It recognizes that we're part of nature, not separate from it. It seeks to understand and work with natural processes rather than override them. It values diversity and complexity. It prioritizes long-term health over short-term gains. And the beautiful thing is, this approach doesn't require sacrifice. It doesn't mean producing less food or accepting lower standards. It means producing better food more sustainably while creating healthier ecosystems and more resilient communities. Asterisk if you want to be part of this transformation. If you want to stay informed about sustainable agriculture and pollinator protection, you need to subscribe and hit that like button. We need to spread this information as widely as possible. The knowledge exists, the techniques have been proven. What we need now is momentum. We need more people understanding these connections. We need more people demanding change. We need more people taking action in their own lives and communities. And that's where you come in. You're not powerless in this. You have more influence than you probably realize. Your choices matter, your voice matters, your actions matter. Start today, right now, before this presentation ends. Commit to one action you're going to take. Maybe it's planting a pollinator garden. Maybe it's finding a local beekeeper to buy honey from. Maybe it's talking to your local government about pesticide policies. Maybe it's starting a compost pile or joining a community garden. Maybe it's just paying more attention to the bees and other pollinators around you. Whatever it is, do something, because the accumulation of millions of small actions is how we create massive change. That's how movements happen. That's how systems transform. And speaking of transformation, let me tell you about the most remarkable thing I've witnessed in all my years of beekeeping. I was working with a colony that had been struggling. The queen was old and not laying well. The population was declining. Mites were becoming a problem. By all conventional wisdom, I should have killed the queen and replaced her with a young one purchased from a breeder. But I decided to let the bees handle it themselves. I wanted to see what they would do. And what happened was extraordinary. The workers sensed the queen was failing. They began building special queen cells. They selected the youngest larvae and fed them royal jelly, a special food that transforms an ordinary larva into a queen. Multiple queen cells were built. Multiple potential queens developing simultaneously. The first queen to emerge went immediately to the other queen cells and destroyed them. She killed her sisters before they could hatch. This sounds brutal, but it's necessary. A hive can only have one queen. Then this virgin queen took her mating flights. She flew out of the hive up into the sky, where drones from other colonies were congregating. She mated with multiple drones, gathering enough sperm to last her entire lifetime of egg laying. She returned to the hive transformed. Within days, she was laying eggs. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. The colony exploded with new life. The population surged, the bees became vigorous and productive again. They had saved themselves, they had perpetuated their line. And the new queen had the genetics of that specific colony, adapted to that specific location, proven survivors. If I had intervened with a purchased queen, I would have broken the genetic line. I would have introduced genes from bees bred in a completely different environment for different traits. The colony might have survived, but it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have had that continuity, that adaptation, that resilience that comes from natural selection. This is the power of working with nature instead of against it. This is what we give up when we try to control everything. We give up nature's wisdom, evolution's testing, the deep knowledge embedded in biological systems refined over millions of years. The same principle applies to agriculture broadly. When we plant diverse crops, we're letting nature's pest control work. When we build healthy soil, we're letting nature's nutrient cycling work. When we integrate animals, we're letting nature's fertilization work. When we protect pollinators, we're letting nature's reproduction work. Every time we work with nature, we get better results with less effort. Every time we fight nature, we work harder just to maintain production while causing increasing damage. Asterisk, and the evidence for this approach is overwhelming. What comes next will give you a completely new perspective. If you have ever dreamed of living closer to nature, if you have ever imagined producing your own honey, if you feel that modern life is pulling you too far away from what really matters, then stay with me because this talk may change the way you see the land forever. Today I am not only speaking about beekeeping. I am speaking about a way of life, a modern, sustainable, and deeply human path. Behind me, you see this apiary. But this is not just a workplace. It is a living ecosystem, a balance between humans, insects, plants, soil, sun, rain, and time. I stand here not only as a beekeeper, but also as someone who works the land, who understands tractors, who lives alongside livestock, and who believes that the future of agriculture must be ecological, intelligent, and respectful. If you are watching this and thinking, maybe I could do this, to hold on to that thought, because every real beekeeper started exactly there. Let's begin with something many beginners underestimate: the location of the apiary. Beekeeping does not start when you buy bees. It starts when you observe the land. A good apiary needs morning sunlight, protection from strong winds, access to clean water, and a natural diversity of flowering plants. Your bees must live in harmony with their environment, not in conflict with it. Modern ecological beekeeping is not about forcing productivity. It is about creating the right conditions so the colony can develop naturally, strongly, and healthily. When the environment is right, the bees respond with strength, balance, and resilience. And this is where real beekeeping begins. Another important decision is the type of hive you choose. Langstroth, dad ant, lay ends, different systems, different philosophies. But no matter the model, the principle should always be the same: respect the natural behavior of the colony. We are not factory managers. We are not controlling machines. We are working with living beings that have their own intelligence, organization, and rhythm. A modern beekeeper uses technology and tools, yes, but never forgets that the bees come first. Not all bees are the same either. There are breeds that are calmer, breeds that are more resistant, breeds that are better adapted to cold climates, and others that tolerate heat and drought much better. Choosing the right bees is not about maximizing honey at all costs. It is about selecting colonies that belong to your environment, that support biodiversity, and that strengthen your local ecosystem. This is where beekeeping becomes something bigger than production. It becomes responsibility. If you are still listening, it means something inside you already understands this connection, even if you can't fully explain it yet. And that is exactly how this journey begins. Now, let's talk about something that is both practical and symbolic: the beekeeper's clothing. The protective suit, gloves, and veil are not just safety measures, they are a statement of respect for the bees and for yourself. When you wear them, you create a boundary of trust. You are careful not to harm them, and they can work without fear. Modern beekeepers often complement traditional suits with lighter, breathable materials and even small cameras or sensors to monitor the hives. Technology should always serve life, not dominate it. To begin, you will need basic tools: a smoker to calm the bees, a hive tool for inspection, and a brush to gently move bees without causing harm. For the beginner, simplicity is key. Overloading with gadgets can distract from the most important lesson: understanding the colony. Everything you do should be deliberate and calm. Every gesture matters. The bees feel your presence and respond accordingly. One of the most exciting parts of beekeeping is harvesting honey. But modern ecological practices teach us patience. You only take what the bees can spare. If you plan to scale, even slightly, you will need proper facilities for extraction and bottling. This doesn't have to be industrial. A clean, organized workspace is enough. Hygiene, order, and respect for the product are the pillars of professional work. And remember, your honey tells a story: the flowers your bees visited, the seasons they endured, the care you provided. Treat it as something sacred, not merely as a commodity. Many beginners overlook this. Beekeeping is regulated for good reasons. Understanding local laws about hive registration, honey labeling, and disease control protects both you and your bees. Sustainable beekeeping is not just an ecological choice, it is a legal and ethical responsibility. When you respect the rules, you ensure the health of your colonies, your neighbors, and the integrity of your craft. Every element of beekeeping, from clothing to hive choice, equipment, extraction, and legislation, forms a web of responsibility. Modern ecological beekeeping is about observation first, action second. It's about working with nature, not against it. It's about combining tradition with modern knowledge and care with innovation. Every beekeeper starts as a beginner, but every action they take shapes the future of the bees and the land. Look at these hives. Every one of them contains thousands of lives, thousands of stories, and thousands of lessons. And the more you observe, the more you understand that beekeeping is a mirror. It reflects patience, persistence, humility, and respect. If you feel inspired, remember this is just the beginning. Stay with me, because in upcoming sections we will explore even more details about equipment, hive management, and seasonal care. By the end of this journey, you will not only know the basics, you will feel what it means to be part of a living ecosystem. Now let's continue with more practical aspects of beekeeping. The clothing you wear is your first tool. A well-fitted suit, gloves, and veil not only protect you, but also show respect to your bees. When you move calmly and deliberately, the colony senses your presence and reacts with harmony. Modern beekeepers often use lightweight materials, ventilation systems, and even sensors to monitor hive health. The key is balance. Technology assists, but never replaces observation. Next is the essential equipment every beginner must have: smoker to gently calm the bees during inspections, hot tool for lifting frames and managing the hive, bee brush to move bees without harm, containers for honey collection. Simplicity is crucial. Too many tools can distract from understanding your colony's behavior. Every action should be deliberate, every gesture matters. When it comes to honey extraction, patience is your ally. Take only what the bees can spare. Respect their work and their needs. If you set up a small extraction area, ensure it is clean and organized. Proper hygiene and order reflect professionalism and care. Remember, each jar of honey tells a story: the flowers visited, the seasons endured, and the attention given by the beekeeper. Treat it as a living product, not a commodity. Understanding legislation is equally important. Register your hives, follow labeling rules, and comply with disease control regulations. This protects your bees, your neighbors, and your business. Ecological beekeeping is about responsibility: ethical, legal, and environmental. Respecting the law is part of respecting life itself. Now, let's discuss the modern philosophy of ecological beekeeping. Observation first, action second. Work with nature, not against it. Blend traditional knowledge with modern innovation. Every decision affects the colony, the land, and your future as a beekeeper. Every beginner will face challenges, but every careful choice strengthens the ecosystem and your connection to it. Look at these hives. Each one contains thousands of lives. intricate patterns, and lessons about patience, humility, and persistence. The more you watch, the more you realize that beekeeping mirrors life itself. Patience, respect, and observation guide every action. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you are ready to start this journey. This is only the beginning. Stay with me as we explore deeper into hive management, seasonal care, and advanced equipment in upcoming sections. By the end of this hour, you will not only know the basics, you will feel what it truly means to be part of a living ecosystem. Managing your hives requires consistency, attention, and respect. Each hive is unique. Some colonies are strong and productive. Others are delicate and cautious. Learning to read the signs, the movement of bees, the shape of the comb, the presence of brood is the heart of successful beekeeping. Modern beekeepers balance tradition with innovation. They use record-typing, seasonal calendars, and even simple digital monitoring to track hive health and growth. But no tool replaces observation and intuition. Seasonal planning is crucial. Spring is a time of preparation. Inspect hives carefully, ensure the queen is healthy, and provide supplemental feeding if necessary. Summer is the season of abundance. Flowers bloom, colonies expand, and honey stores grow. Autumn is reflection and conservation. Prepare hives for winter, protect them from pests, and ensure enough food remains. Winter is quiet observation, minimal disturbance, only essential checks. The colony rests, storing energy for the next cycle. Following the rhythm of the seasons connects you to the natural flow of life. It teaches patience, humility, and a deeper understanding of nature. Every beekeeper, beginner or experienced, must also consider the long-term vision. Plan your apiary layout carefully. Consider accessibility for inspections and honey collection, protection from weather, and the diversity of local flora. This is not only practical, it is ecological. The health of the land and the colony are intertwined. Your role is to guide and protect, not dominate. You become a guardian, a teacher, and a learner at the same time. Every hive tells a story. Every frame, every comb, every buzzing colony teaches a lesson. Respect the bees, understand their language, and your journey as a beekeeper will flourish. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like to join this journey of modern, sustainable beekeeping. Stay tuned for future sessions where we will explore detailed equipment reviews, seasonal hive management techniques, specific bee breeds and their unique characteristics, advanced extraction methods, legal updates, and industry insights. By the end of this series, you will not just know how to start. You will feel what it truly means to be part of a living ecosystem. And you will be ready to take your first steps with confidence and care. There is something deeply transformative that happens when you spend enough time among the hives. At first, you hear only noise. Then, slowly, you begin to hear meaning. You recognize calm, tension, strength, weakness. You learn when a colony is thriving and when it needs help. This connection cannot be learned from books alone. It is built with time, presence, and respect. Many people arrive to beekeeping searching for honey. But those who stay because they discover something deeper: purpose. Working with bees changes the way you look at agriculture, at technology, and even at progress. A modern beekeeper does not reject innovation. Instead, they use it wisely. Solar-powered fences, moisture sensors, temperature monitoring, lightweight tools, efficient extractors. These are not enemies of tradition. They are allies when used with intelligence and ethics. Beekeeping fits naturally within a modern ecological farm. Bees improve pollination for crops. Healthy landscapes improve honey quality. Responsible grazing improves floral diversity. Smart use of machinery protects the soil. Everything becomes connected. Apiculture, tractors, livestock, soil, water, biodiversity. This is not romanticism. This is functional sustainability. If you are listening carefully, you may start to realize that this path is not about escaping modern life. It is about redefining it. It is about building a future where productivity and respect for life can exist together. Many beginners ask, how many hives should I start with? The honest answer is fewer than you think. Start small, learn deeply, grow slowly. A strong foundation is always better than fast expansion without understanding. Every inspection is a dialogue. You open the hive. You observe. You interpret. You decide. This rhythm develops discipline, patience, and responsibility. These qualities do not stay in the apiary. They follow you into every aspect of your life. And if at this point you feel that this message resonates with you, That this way of thinking connects with something personal. Then I invite you clearly and honestly subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Not for numbers, but because this space is being built for people who truly care about doing things the right way. This journey does not end with one talk. It grows with every season, every question, every experience shared. In future sessions, we will go deeper. We will talk specifically about different hive models and when to use each. We will explore detailed protective clothing and professional-grade equipment. We will analyze real extraction rooms and how to design them properly. We will study bee behavior, disease prevention, queen management, and seasonal strategies. We will even discuss the real economics side of beekeeping, without myths and without illusions. But everything begins here, with respect, with observation, with intention. Because beekeeping is not something you do. It is something you become. There is also a truth that many videos never show you: beekeeping is beautiful, but it is not always easy. You will lose colonies. You will doubt your decisions. You will face weather that you cannot control, flowering seasons that fail, and moments where you feel you have done everything right and still things go wrong. And yet this is exactly where the real beekeeper is born. Because in those moments you learn responsibility. You learn humility. You learn that nature is not something to dominate, but something to understand. This is why ecological beekeeping is not a trend. It is a mindset. It forces you to ask better questions. How can I support the bees instead of exploiting them? How can I improve the environment instead of exhausting it? How can I produce with dignity instead of pressure? Modern tools help, yes. Data helps. Mechanization helps. But ethics must always guide the hand that uses them. When you manage hives with this philosophy, you begin to notice something extraordinary. Your colonies become more resilient. Your honey gains character. Your work gains meaning. People who consume your honey will feel it. Not because of marketing, but because authenticity always leaves a trace. And this is why this channel exists. Not to create viral content, but to build knowledge, to build respect, to build a community of people who want to work with nature, not against it. If you are still here listening, you are already part of that community. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you believe that agriculture, apiculture, and rural life deserve a future that is intelligent, ethical, and sustainable. Because the future of beekeeping will not be built by those who seek shortcuts. It will be built by those who are willing to observe, learn, fail, improve, and persist. And in the next sessions we will continue this path together. When you walk into an apiary with the right mindset, you stop being a visitor and start becoming a participant in something much larger than yourself. You begin to notice the small details, the rhythm of the flight, the subtle changes in sound, the way the bees respond to temperature, light, and even your own mood. This awareness transforms the way you approach every aspect of rural work. You start thinking differently about how you use machinery. You become more careful with how the soil is treated. You pay closer attention to water sources, to flowering cycles, to the impact of chemicals far beyond your own land. A modern ecological beekeeper understands that every decision creates consequences. Using fewer chemicals means healthier bees. Supporting local flora means stronger colonies. Choosing sustainable practices means long-term productivity instead of short-term gains. This way of working does not make you slower. It makes you wiser. Beekeeping teaches you to value time. Not the rush time of deadlines and pressure, but natural time. The time it takes for a colony to grow. The time it takes for nectar to transform into honey. The time it takes for experience to become true knowledge. Many people search for quick results. Few are willing to build something that lasts. And yet, everything truly valuable in agriculture is built slowly. If you are still listening, it means you understand that deep down. That is why this space exists. To offer clarity in a world full of shortcuts. To offer honest guidance instead of empty promises. To show the real path, demanding but deeply rewarding. Because beekeeping done correctly does not only produce honey. It produces balance. It produces awareness. It produces a different kind of future. And that future begins with people like you who choose to stay, to learn, and to care. There is a moment every beekeeper remembers. The first time you open a hive and feel no fear, only calm. The first time you recognize the queen without searching. The first time you taste honey from your own colonies and realize you did not simply harvest a product, you earned a relationship. These moments are not bought. They are built. Built through patience. Built through mistakes. built through mornings when you wake early to check the weather, and evenings when you replay every inspection in your mind, wondering how to improve. This is why beekeeping cannot be separated from the rest of rural life. You begin to understand how flowering depends on rainfall, how soil health affects plant diversity, how livestock management influences the surrounding ecosystem, how the way you drive machinery, how you manage land, how you treat margins and wild areas, all of it eventually reaches the bees. A modern beekeeper does not work in isolation. They become a steward of a living system. And this is exactly what the world needs more of. People who understand interdependence. People who think long-term. People who value resilience over speed. If this message feels different from what you usually hear, that is intentional. Because real beekeeping is not about shortcuts. It is about commitment. It is about showing up even when the harvest is small. It is about continuing even after losses. It is about learning when things go wrong instead of giving up. And those who walk this path seriously are never truly beginners for long. They become observers, then practitioners, then guardians. This is not just about producing honey. This is about becoming part of something that existed long before us and must continue long after us. And if you are still here, still listening, still reflecting, then perhaps this path is not as distant from you as you once thought. There is also a responsibility that comes with knowledge. Once you understand what bees need, you can no longer ignore the impact of your choices. You begin to question the use of aggressive chemicals. You begin to protect wildflowers instead of removing them. You begin to value biodiversity not as a concept but as a daily practice. This is where beekeeping becomes leadership. Not leadership over bees, but leadership by example. When neighbors see healthy colonies, strong pollination, and consistent honey quality, they start asking questions. They start paying attention. They start considering change. And slowly, without conflict, without preaching, transformation begins. This is the power of doing things correctly. A single well-managed apiary can influence an entire landscape. A single committed beekeeper can influence an entire community. And every beginner who chooses the ecological path strengthens this movement. You do not need to be perfect to start. You only need to be honest with your intention. Learn, observe, adapt, improve. That is the real cycle of sustainable agriculture. Some days you will feel confident. Other days you will feel uncertain. Both are part of the process. Because growth does not happen in comfort. It happens in attention. The bees teach this without words. They show it in their organization, their resilience, their capacity to adapt without losing balance. If you allow yourself to learn from them, they will make you better. Not only as a beekeeper, but as a person. And that is perhaps the most powerful truth of this path. Beekeeping does not just change how you work, it changes how you see the world. At some point, you stop measuring progress only in kilograms of honey. You begin to measure it in quieter ways. In the strength of your colonies after winter. In the calm behavior of your bees during inspections. In the balance you see between production and survival. This is when you understand that success in beekeeping is not about speed. It is about stability. Many people enter this world looking for quick results. But bees teach you a different logic. Slow growth, consistent care, and respect for natural rhythms always outperform impatience. A modern ecological beekeeper learns to design systems that support life instead of exhausting it. Planting flowering trees and hedgerows. Protecting water sources. Leaving space for wild nature. Reducing interventions when the colony is healthy. These choices may seem small, but together they create resilience. And resilience is the true wealth of any agricultural project. You also begin to understand that mistakes are not failures. They are information. Each loss teaches something. Each difficulty reveals what must be improved. This mindset transforms frustration into learning, and learning into long-term strength. This is why beekeeping is one of the most honest activities you can choose. It reflects your decisions clearly. You cannot hide behind marketing or excuses. The bees respond only to reality. And perhaps that is why so many people feel deeply connected to this path. Because in a world full of noise, beekeeping offers clarity. It strips things down to what truly matters. Attention, responsibility, consistency, and respect. If you stay on this path, you will not only produce honey, you will produce knowledge. You will produce balance. You will produce impact. And step by step, season by season, hive by hive, you will realize that this is no longer something you are learning. It is something you are becoming. There is a quiet discipline that develops over time in every serious beekeeper. You begin to plan ahead without forcing the future. You learn to prepare without controlling. You act with intention, but you accept uncertainty. This discipline changes the way you manage everything. Your schedule, your land, your resources, your expectations. You no longer chase productivity blindly. You design systems that can survive bad seasons, not only good ones. This is where modern beekeeping meets intelligent agriculture. You start asking smarter questions. How can I reduce stress on the colonies? How can I simplify my management without losing quality? How can I make my operation more efficient while remaining ethical? How can I use machinery in a way that protects soil, plants, and pollinators? The answers are never universal. They are personal. They depend on your land, your climate, your goals, your values. And that is why copying others rarely works long term. You must observe your own bees. You must study your own environment. You must build your own system. This is not weakness. This is mastery. When you reach this point, you realize something important. You are no longer following beekeeping. You are practicing it. You stop asking, what should I do? And you begin asking, what are my bees telling me? That shift changes everything. Because beekeeping is not controlled from textbooks. It is guided from presence, from consistency, from attention. And slowly, without you even noticing at first, you begin to earn something that cannot be bought. Trust. Trust from your colonies. Trust from other beekeepers. Trust from clients who taste the difference. Trust from yourself. That is when this work stops feeling like an experiment and starts feeling like a path. Over time, you begin to understand that beekeeping is not a hobby you visit when you have free time. It becomes a rhythm that shapes your days, your decisions, and even your mindset. You check the weather differently. You observe flowering periods more carefully. You pay attention to subtle changes in temperature, humidity, and wind. All because somewhere in your mind, the bees are always present. This is not obsession. This is awareness. And awareness is one of the most valuable skills any farmer, beekeeper, or rural professional can develop. A modern ecological operation is built on this awareness. You start designing your land with intention. You think about access paths for tractors that avoid disturbing hives. You plan grazing areas to protect flowering zones. You preserve natural margins instead of removing them. You begin to see your property not as separate activities, but as one integrated system. Apiculture, livestock, machinery, soil, vegetation, water, everything starts to work together instead of competing. This integration is not theory. It is practical, efficient, and deeply sustainable. And the most interesting part is this. When your system becomes healthier, your workload often becomes lighter. Fewer problems, fewer emergencies, fewer interventions. Because nature, when supported instead of forced, organizes itself better than any plan. Many beginners fear that ecological approaches mean lower productivity. In reality, the opposite is often true in the long term. Healthy colonies live longer. Stable systems require fewer corrections. Strong landscapes recover faster from stress. Sustainability is not weakness. It is intelligence applied over time. If you are still here, still listening, still engaged, then you are not just watching a video. You are already thinking like someone who belongs to this world. And that is exactly the point where transformation begins. There comes a stage where you begin to understand the deeper value of continuity. Not just continuity of production, but continuity of care. You start thinking in years instead of weeks. You imagine what your apiary will look like in 5 seasons. You consider what kind of landscape you want to leave behind, not only what you want to harvest. This long-term vision changes everything. You become more selective with your actions. You intervene less impulsively. You observe more before deciding, because you understand that every intervention carries consequences that echo beyond the present moment. A mature beekeeper is not the one who does more. It is the one who knows when to do less. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, and also one of the most powerful. Many beginners believe that constant manipulation leads to better results. But with time, you realize that excessive interference often creates more problems than it solves. Healthy colonies, placed in healthy environments, often require surprisingly little disturbance. This is the elegance of good beekeeping. Silent efficiency, invisible balance, consistent stability. And when you reach this understanding, something shifts again. You stop seeing bees as units of production. You begin to see them as partners in a shared system. You respect their intelligence. You admire their organization. You protect their conditions instead of forcing their behavior. This mindset does not make you weaker as a producer. It makes you stronger as a professional. Because your work becomes resilient. Your results become consistent. Your reputation becomes solid. People trust honey that comes from care. People respect practices that are honest. People recognize when something is built with integrity. That recognition does not come overnight. But when it comes, it lasts. And that is one of the most valuable things this path can offer. Not fast success, but durable credibility. If you continue walking this road, season after season, choice after choice, you will slowly realize that you are no longer trying to become a beekeeper. You already are one. There is also a quiet pride that grows with experience. Not pride in numbers, not pride in yield, but pride in craftsmanship. You begin to notice it when you open a hive and everything feels balanced. The brood is compact. The bees are calm. The frames are clean. The rhythm is healthy. That moment tells you more than any certificate ever could. This is when you realize that good beekeeping is not loud. It does not seek attention. It does not need to prove itself constantly. It simply works. And people notice. Neighbors begin to ask how you manage your colonies. Other beekeepers begin to observe your results. Consumers begin to trust your honey without needing persuasion. Because consistency speaks louder than promotion. A modern ecological beekeeper builds reputation slowly, through actions, not words. Through clean practices. Through respect for animals. Through transparency. Through patience. And that reputation becomes one of your strongest tools. You will also notice something else. Your mindset outside the apiary changes too. You become more patient in everyday life. More attentive to detail. More thoughtful before acting. More aware of cause and effect. Beekeeping does not stay in the hives. It follows you home. It follows you into your work. It follows you into your relationships. That is why many who start this path describe it as more than an activity. They describe it as a teacher. Not a teacher that speaks, but a teacher that shows. Every season shows you something. Every challenge shows you something. Every success shows you something. And slowly, without forcing it, you begin to understand one of the deepest truths of this craft. You do not master beekeeping. You grow alongside it. The bees change. The climate changes. The landscape changes. You change. The work never becomes static. It remains alive. And that is exactly why it remains meaningful. Because when something continues to teach you, when something continues to challenge you, when something continues to require your presence and your respect, it keeps you connected to reality. And in a world increasingly disconnected from natural processes, that connection is no longer just valuable. It is essential. At this stage, you begin to see the broader impact of your work. Your hives are no longer isolated units. They are part of a network that sustains the environment around you. Healthy bees pollinate local plants, which supports biodiversity. Strong colonies ensure your crops thrive without excessive chemicals. Thoughtful land management preserves soil, water, and natural habitats. Everything you do ripples outward. Your decisions affect not only your apiary but the surrounding ecosystem. This is why modern ecological beekeeping is not only a personal endeavor, it is a community responsibility. You also begin to notice how small habits accumulate over time. Regular inspections, careful record typing, and consistent maintenance create stability. Skipping steps may seem harmless, but over time small errors compound, affecting colony health and honey production. And that is the lesson that experience teaches. Discipline is more valuable than shortcuts. Observation is more important than assumptions. Respect is more impactful than control. Beekeeping also teaches emotional resilience. You experience losses, colonies that fail, seasons that underperform, unexpected weather events. But instead of discouragement, you learn to adapt. You learn to analyze, reflect, and improve. Every difficulty becomes a teacher. Every challenge strengthens your skill. Every setback reinforces your commitment to sustainable practices. When you fully embrace this perspective, your work transcends simple production. It becomes a craft, a responsibility, and a source of fulfillment. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you are committed to building a future that is ethical, sustainable, and deeply connected to nature. The journey is long, but every step strengthens both you and your colonies. And with patience, care, and observation, you will see the rewards not just in honey, but in life itself. As you continue your journey, you begin to notice patterns you never saw before. The way bees communicate through movement, the subtle shifts in hive temperature, the rhythm of nectar flow through the seasons. These details tell a story if you are willing to listen. Each inspection becomes an exercise in mindfulness. You watch the bees work and you start to understand their needs without speaking. You sense when a colony is stressed, when it is healthy, and when it is ready to expand. This awareness spills over into all aspects of farm life. You manage livestock with more empathy. You rotate crops more intelligently. And you plan machinery use more thoughtfully. Every element of your farm begins to work in harmony because you are now attuned to patterns, cycles, and connections. Beekeeping teaches you patience, but it also teaches foresight. You learn to plan months in advance, to anticipate seasonal changes, and to prepare your colonies for the unexpected. This foresight is a skill that extends beyond the apiary. It becomes part of how you approach every project in life. The beauty of modern ecological beekeeping is that it rewards observation and careful planning, not for shortcuts. When you respect the rhythm of nature, your colonies grow stronger, your honey is richer, and your work becomes more meaningful. And through it all, you begin to understand one profound truth. The best results are not measured in kilograms of honey, but in the health of your bees, the balance of your land, and the strength of the ecosystem you help sustain. Every season reinforces this lesson. Every success reminds you why you started. Every challenge teaches humility and resilience. If you are still here, listening and learning, then you are already walking the path of a responsible, modern, and ecological beekeeper. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like to continue growing with this community and to stay informed on the next steps in your journey. As the seasons pass, your perspective continues to deepen. You no longer see each hive as a separate unit, but as part of a living, interconnected system. The success of one colony depends on the health of the others, the diversity of surrounding plants, and the care you provide to the land as a whole. You notice subtle shifts in nature, early blooms, late frosts, or changes in local insect populations. These signals teach you adaptability, patience, and humility. You learn to act deliberately rather than react impulsively. Every decision is informed by observation, experience, and respect for life. At this stage, you also begin to understand the intangible rewards, the quiet moments in the apiary, the gentle hum of healthy bees, the satisfaction of seeing colonies thrive under your care. These are the true markers of progress. The honey you harvest is no longer merely a product. It is the result of harmony between human effort and natural processes. And now, as we approach the end of this talk, it is time to reflect. The journey of a beekeeper is ongoing, filled with lessons, surprises, and growth. What began as curiosity evolves into responsibility, awareness, and connection. You have learned that modern ecological beekeeping is not only a method, it is a way of life. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you are ready to embrace this path. And stay tuned for future sessions where we will explore each aspect of beekeeping in more detail. The story does not end here, it continues in every hive, every season, and in every beekeeper willing to walk this path with care and dedication. As you step back and observe your apiary, you begin to see the bigger picture. Every hive, every colony, every flower, every tool, and every decision contributes to a delicate balance. Beekeeping is no longer a series of tasks, it becomes a philosophy. You notice how even small actions make a difference. Planting a few extra flowering plants increases nectar diversity. Leaving hedgerows intact provides shelter and habitat. Minimizing chemical use strengthens colonies and the surrounding ecosystem. These choices, repeated season after season, create resilience that lasts far beyond a single harvest. The lessons learned here extend beyond the apiary. Patience, observation, responsibility, and care become part of your daily life. You approach challenges with a calmer mind and a longer view. You understand that every decision has consequences, and that respect for life brings lasting rewards. And now, as this session comes to a close, remember this: the journey of a beekeeper is never truly finished. It is continuous, evolving with every season, every observation, and every choice you make. What matters most is the commitment to act thoughtfully, sustainably, and ethically. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you want to continue learning, exploring, and growing as a modern ecological beekeeper. This is not the end, it is simply the beginning of a lifelong path filled with discovery, care, and connection to the natural world. Your journey has only just started, and every step you take will shape the future of your apiary and the life around it. As we draw this session to its conclusion, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for joining me here today. Your presence, your attention, and your willingness to learn mean more than you might realize. Beekeeping is a path that requires dedication, patience, and care, and taking the time to understand is the first step toward truly meaningful practice. We hope that this session has been useful for you. Whether you are a complete beginner or already have some experience, the principles we discussed today — observation, ecological respect, ethical practices, and careful planning — are essential foundations for any beekeeper. The journey does not end here. There is so much more to explore, and we are committed to providing many more sessions, each focused on a different aspect of beekeeping. In upcoming talks, you will learn in detail about selecting and managing the right type of hives for your environment, understanding and caring for different bee breeds, choosing and using the correct protective clothing and equipment, efficient and sustainable honey extraction and storage, legal requirements and best practices for a safe and compliant apiary, seasonal strategies to maximize both colony health and productivity. Each session will build on the knowledge you gained today, providing practical, professional, and ecologically sound guidance. We want you to feel confident in every step you take in your beekeeping journey. Remember, modern ecological beekeeping is about more than honey. It is about building a connection with nature, a relationship with your land, and a deep understanding of life itself. Every decision you make as a beekeeper resonates beyond the hive. It affects the environment, the community, and the future of the craft. So as we close this talk, I encourage you to reflect on what you've learned today. Think about your own apiary, your own land, and the ways you can apply these principles to make a positive impact. Small, thoughtful actions create long-term change. Respect, patience, observation, and care are the most powerful tools you will ever have. And above all, remember that you are not alone on this journey. This community of beekeepers, learners, and nature enthusiasts is here to support you. By staying engaged, asking questions, and participating in future sessions, you will continue to grow your knowledge and skills. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like so that you don't miss our upcoming P1 NCIs, which will explore every aspect of beekeeping in even greater detail. From hive management to advanced seasonal strategies, from ecological practices to legislation and safety, we will guide you step by step. Thank you again for accompanying us today. Your curiosity, commitment, and passion for learning are what make this work meaningful. We hope you found this session insightful, inspiring, and practical. Remember, the path of a beekeeper is long and evolving. It is filled with discovery, growth, and connection. And while today is the end of this particular session, it is only the beginning of a much larger journey. Stay tuned for our future P1 NCIs. We will continue to explore, teach, and share everything you need to know to become a confident, responsible, and modern ecological beekeeper. Together, we can nurture not only our bees, but our land, our communities, and the next generation of beekeepers. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for committing to this path. We look forward to seeing you again in our next session. Until then, observe, care, and continue building your connection with the natural world. The journey has only just begun, and your role as a guardian of nature is already underway. Let's walk this path together, one hive at a time. Thank you, and see you soon in our next P1 Chia.